Hello everyone and welcome back finally to a new video in the Fiero. It's been quite a while, but we're here with a Fiero update. It's currently a very windy fall day, so I'm actually filming this inside the Fiero as it's warming up because our mics just can't handle this wind and you just hear the whole time. So we're doing this a bit differently. But basically, I finally got the Fiero back from quite a lot of work that's been done to it. I'm sure a lot of you people have been missing the Fiero on the channel. It hasn't been here for a while because it's been out getting work done to it. So it all started about a month ago. Me and our local mechanic, Alan, it was, getting a little cold out. We figured we might address some of the problems that we've been having with the car. Number one was the high idle. The car was idling at least 2,000 RPM, sometimes higher, and something was wrong with that. This is a fuel-injected car. You can't just tune the idle. There was something else wrong with it. It turns out there was a vacuum leak with the intake. So the intake, when we took it apart, actually had like a gouge in it, and it was getting extra air into the engine, and then the engine had to match that with fuel, and you end up getting just a super high idle. Air was getting into the engine that wasn't supposed to. So we wanted to put a new intake gasket on it, high and low, just replace all of that. The next thing we were going to do is just put new spark plugs in it, because that's just what you do, and we weren't sure the last time these had been changed. That, however, turned into quite a fiasco. If you look at the engine in the Fiero, it's sideways mounted. It's transverse, I think the term is. Basically, that's how you mount an engine on a transaxle, usually. Like for a front-wheel drive car, when you have the engine up front and the wheels up front, you mount it sideways just because it matches with the transaxle nice. Whereas this is a mid-engine car, it's mid-engine rear-wheel drive, so it's still a transaxle just in the back, and it's still sideways mounted. The only problem with that is you look at it, you have 3 spark plugs in the front. Those are fine, nice and easy to touch, except then there's 3 spark plugs in the back behind the intake right next to the firewall here. So those are near impossible to get to. So we attempted to get those while we had the intake off because we were working on getting those new gaskets anyway, and there was a problem. These 3 back spark plugs looked like they've never been changed. Here's a picture of one of them that we got out. We assumed that this was pretty much a 30-year-old spark plug. This is like brand new from the car and no one had ever changed it, which sucks. I mean, how are you just never going to change the spark plugs in your car? That's really bad. But I guess because they're so hard to get to, people would just change the front 3, because the front 3 were new, the other 3 were that. So that was a big problem. We worked for a long time to try to get those out. Kudos to the local mechanic, because he did actually get all 3 out. The only problem is the middle one, when we took it out, it was so stuck in there that the spark plug came out, but the threads on the spark plug stayed in, which was a huge problem. Because now if you try to get those out, they're literally leading right into the cylinder. If you try to, screw those out or get those out, you get a whole bunch of debris in the engine, and now there's a whole bunch of like stuff on your cylinder. That's like the worst thing you can have. So we were pretty upset about that. How are we going to get this coil out, or this this metal piece that's stuck into the engine in the back where we can't even see it? It was a huge issue. So we decided to take it to a professional. We did some research. Shout out to my mom for finding everything. But we found this shop called Fiero John's. John Miller Car Care is the official name. But basically, they're a mechanic shop that specializes in Fieros and DeLoreans, which is pretty awesome. And it's in Jersey. It's only like an hour or so from here. I can't believe I just said Jersey. So they picked it up for us. They took it over and they were like, oh yeah, no problem. We've seen that like all the time. Nobody changes the back spark plugs, and they were able to fix that for us, as well as get us a brand new intake, because instead of putting just new gaskets on, they actually got us a different intake. It was used, but it was in much better shape than the one we have. You can see from some of the pan shots, the paint it's not perfect, but it's better than what we had. The other one was just kind of falling apart. So that's cool. We have a brand new intake. We got 3 new spark plugs. But we didn't stop there. While John was looking at it, he's of course a Fiero expert and great at restoring these cars. And so he found a bunch of stuff just doing a once-over that we decided to go ahead with. So we went for new spark plugs, and we got pretty much a full restoration of this car. So he was looking at the suspension. We got that pretty much rebuilt. He says the suspension was really not so good, and parts of it were falling apart. Like, we got new struts rear and back, new bushings, polyurethane bushings, for front and back. That is all totally rebuilt, and I gotta say, driving it, you can really feel the difference. I have a feeling that when I bought this car, it was probably sitting for a bit, and I wonder if that had something to do with it, but probably just because it's a 30-year-old car, it needed some parts rebuilt. So the suspension is totally redone with some brand new fancy parts, which is really cool, as long as our steering. Now, I don't know if I ever actually complained about this on camera, but another big problem we had with this car, well, it wasn't really a big problem, an annoying problem we had is any slow right turn you would make, you'd get this high-pitched squeaking from one of the wheels. I thought it was the front, driver's side wheel, and it was just like, oh, it was so annoying, and it would get louder the more you drove. That's totally gone now, and I have a feeling it's either because of the new suspension or something else was loose. But one of the problems he told us that we had was our steering box. This says rack and pinion steering, but as you turn the wheel, the steering box would actually like move up and down. It was really loose, so we got a whole new rack and pinion steering system in here, brand new, and you can feel the difference. I thought this was good steering before, but now it's like, it's fantastic. It's really good. Brand new steering system in it. Of course, this car still doesn't have power steering, but that's awesome. You get a lot of feedback from the road, and the steering is really good now. So the squeaking is totally gone. Whether it was the new bushings, the new shocks, the new steering system, I'm not sure. I thought it was the dust shield, but it might have been something more complex than that. So that's all been rebuilt. The suspension is like totally restored on this car. Super cool. Perhaps my favorite thing that happened, he was like, your catalytic converter it's pretty full. It's kind of done. He's like, I could take care of that for you. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. So this is a catalytic converter delete now. That the cat is gone. And yeah, I think that's just really cool. It's not something I was planning on doing, but I'm glad I did. As you hear later, there's definitely a big difference to how this car sounds. It's not a bad difference, which I was kind of worried about. I'm always scared about modifying the exhaust on a car because I don't want it to be a buzz car or obnoxious or just annoying. I don't like that. But what it does is make this car's sound from this V6 way better. Like it elevates the sound. You get sort of a deeper and raspier sound from it. I love in the cabin, you still hear a lot of the mechanical parts of the engine, but you get a bit more of the exhaust now. It is a bit louder, but mainly it just sounds better. You get a throatier noise to the engine, which is awesome. It sounds really cool, especially on the downshifts. It's really neat. So that's pretty much all the updates we have on this car. Fully rebuilt suspension. We got a new steering system in here. Oh, and we got brand new tires. We got brand new tires for all four corners, 205s in front, 215s in back, which is really cool that they're staggered size. And yeah, we had the engine looked at. We had, new intake manifold. We got no catalytic converter, brand new spark plugs all around, and we got a new, I can't remember what it's called, but one of the pipes in there, someone had to put in just a PVC pipe, and that was leaking oil all over the place. But we got that replaced with an actual Fiero part, and now we're not leaking so much oil now, which is great. But yeah, with all of that said, this car has had like a minor restoration done to it, and it's pretty awesome. So let's drive it and see how it goes. So awesome to have this car back. It was gone for about a month, or it was off the road for about a month, since me and Alan, decided to start changing the spark plugs to where it is now, like fully rebuilt. And I'm just so happy to have it back. This is, I thought this car drove great with falling apart suspension, but it drives so well now. You can really feel the difference. Especially, I feel like the steering is the big thing I noticed. Just the feel of it is so much tighter. Even though I thought it was really tight before, it's really good now. As well as just the engine sound. The big thing is we took the catalytic converter out, and you can really hear it. I mean, just the and even some subtle pops there. It sounds, I'm sure, really cool outside the car, but it sounds really neat in here too, because you can hear just like bits of the engine running, because it's right there. I mean, it's right behind you. There's not a lot between you and the engine, but you get a bit more exhaust note now with it. And this car is it's just awesome. I love the 80s generation of cars, even though this is really the only one I've driven, but it's old enough that it's cool, but it's new enough that it almost drives like a normal car. With some of the older cars, it's such a thing to drive, and with our Corvette, you gotta drive it. It's kind of an exhausting car to drive. It's awesome and I love it, but it's not something that you would like road trip, whereas it drives almost like a modern car. It drives that well. but it's so analog still and so cool. It's just such a great combination. I love this generation of cars. One thing with our new tires as well, they are grippy. Apparently our old tires were getting on a bit and weren't worn, but just were old and needed to be changed. But with these new tires, I used to be able to, you know, skirt a little bit out of turns, chirp it in the second. No more. These are grippy. I cannot do any of that, but man, does it handle well with these new tires. With the new idle, I mean, first off, the engine is just running fantastic. It really, I think, like those new spark plugs, I can't believe it was running as well as it did with like 30-year-old spark plugs. It's insane. But it's running way better now, without the engine leak, with that new tube we put in there, and without the Catalytic. I think it's just running a lot smoother, and of course it's idling lower. You know, it used to idle at like 2,000 RPM plus, which means when I'm driving now like 30 or 40 miles an hour in 5th gear, you could just get your foot off the gas, and the idle would keep you going at like 50 miles an hour because it wanted to idle so high. So now you can actually run it at like low RPMs without it fighting you, which is pretty nice. So again, you can drive it quietly like an old car. It's fine. That was another thing I was worried about. That it was just going to be loud all the time, which would drive me crazy, like those stupid buzz cars. But no, it can be quiet, or you can just, and it's such a good sound too. It's an awesome V6, 2.8 liter V6, and it sounds so neat. I love that I went with the V6 and didn't settle for the Iron Duke 4-cylinder. So let's test out these new tires and this new suspension here on our famous twisty roads. Too, but man, it still grips really well. This is such a good handling car, and I've said before, you don't need to drive it super fast to have fun in it. It's just so much fun to drive in general, and going around those corners at even a little bit of its potential is just so much fun. It's so well balanced, and now with our new steering box, it just corners so well, and you get such a good feel from it. Oh, this is just the best car ever. I love this thing, and I'm so happy to have it back. Fiero John did a great job of restoring this thing. Obviously they know what they're doing. They do like full bottom-up restorations of cars. While we were at the shop, there was like 7 or 8 other Fieros there. One of them was like totally apart. They must have been doing a full restoration to it. But there was a bunch of other ones there, you know, notchbacks. There was a few 88s there. If you're not a Fiero person, 88s are like the nicest Fiero you can get. Those are like double the price of all the other Fieros, simply because that was the last year. And in that time, Pontiac actually redid the entire front suspension, and you got some better stuff in there, which is why the 88s are the most desirable. They're probably the best built Fiero. They have the most stuff in them, which is funny because Pontiac finally did what they really wanted to with the Fiero, and then it got it immediately canceled that year. So there's only 1 year with the new suspension in it. But this is an 87, and I think it handles just fantastic. You know, the V6 GT is just awesome. So, a funny story of when we went to pick this car up. The gas gauges in Fieros are famously unreliable. I mean, you probably see where this is going. But the gas tank is actually right here. It's in this center part underneath your shifter cables and some electrical stuff. Is the gas tank. It's here. Because back there's no room. You have the trunk, you have the engine, you have the transmission. Up front there's no room because you have the radiator and the spare tire. That's right, you have the spare tire up there and some other stuff. So the gas tank's right here. It's in between us. And it's sort of a long vertical thing. So the gas gauges just don't work well with them, especially mine for some reason. As soon as you're under half tank, you have no idea how much gas you have. So it gets stuck at half tank, and then sometimes it just flips to E, and it's like, oh, you're out of gas, by the way. And so you just can't go by it. It's not reliable. So I usually just set my trip odometer, and it's like, okay, I fill up every 150 miles or so. So when I got the car back, the gas gauge was at half tank, and the odometer was at 190 something miles. And I'm like, am I low on gas, or did they fill it up and not reset the trip odometer because, you know, they didn't know to do that? So I'm like, it'll be fine. And of course, we're out like in the Pine Barrens, and there's not really gas stations all over the place. And of course, we ran out of gas. The Fiero totally died. I was like, crap, we are out of gas. So we pulled over to, you call it like an outlet gravel pace on the road, which was conveniently there. You know, we could have died like in 2-lane traffic. That would have been the worst. We would have had to like push it off the road, but we just coasted off to the side. You know, my dad was there, and Gracie were there, and so they went to go and get me some gas at a nearby gas station. They got a little 1 gallon, you know, gas tank, and so we put this one gallon of gas in this car. And so and then we had to go get back to the gas station on 1 gallon of gas, which is pretty stressful. You know, I mean, these things are fuel efficient. I get about 18 miles per gallon in it, but even still, pretty nerve-wracking. So we had to go find another gas station. And of course, the stupid GPS, we put in gas, and it took us to some shopping district that had no gas in it. So we're running on 1 gallon of gas, trying to find a gas station out in the Pine Barrens. It was stressful. We did eventually find one. It was Exxon or something, and we got gas and we were able to get home. But man, that was stressful. But I tell you, the Fiero went for quite a while on 1 gallon of gas, and now I have an auxiliary 1 gallon tank of gas in the back in case we ever need it, because these stinking fuel gauges don't work. I love the sound of the sound. My sunroof, it leaks a little bit. You get some really bad wind noise from it, but that's fine. Like everything else on this car is now pretty much restored, like with the whole suspension redone, new steering, and the engine is running fantastic. It's in really good shape to be driven now. A few other minor things that I'm probably just going to be working on in the future. Our cruise control doesn't work. This car does have cruise control, but it's never worked. I haven't looked at that much, just because am I really going to use cruise control in this car? Maybe. The other thing, we do have air conditioning. Air conditioning doesn't work. I think it's functional. It's just that the coolant or whatever it uses is illegal. Maybe I'll figure something out with that. Again, also, none of these are really pressing things though. Like all the stupid noise from that wheel is fixed, which I'm so happy about. And of course the engine's running great. And it's just such a fun car to drive. I would drive this every day if I could. It's just great. The manual is really critical to this car. You know, this car came with a 5-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic, which is cool. I mean, shout out to everybody who has an automatic Fiero, but I don't know. To have a 3-speed in like a go-kart sporty car like this, I don't think it matches very well at all. With the new electric cars coming out, you know, this car, it's not very fast. It's quick, it's agile, you know, but as far as straight line speed, it's not very fast. It makes 140 horsepower, 70 foot-pounds of torque. You feel it all. It's a very angry engine, but it's not like fast. Like an electric car obviously would absolutely obliterate this car. But this car is just so much fun to drive, and the engine and V6 and the manual just play so well into the whole experience of this car. You know, you could have a car with all of this, but you remove the engine and put in something electric. It's just boring. I don't know. This car has such character, and all of that ties together so well that just something I feel like you can't replicate in an electric car. You know, going fast isn't sometimes the funnest part of a car. It's just the experience of it that makes it. All right, everyone. Well, that pretty much wraps up our Fiero update. You know, as I said, big thanks to Fiero John for working on it and all the, you know, great restoration stuff he did to it. I'm so happy to have this car back. If you can't tell, this is like my favorite thing ever is to drive this car, and I'm so happy to have it back, really, and especially in the great shape it is now. It's really awesome. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. We're gonna try and put videos out a bit more regularly. You know, I've got about 2 weeks of school and then a week of finals, and after that I'm on winter break, so we can put some more stuff out. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.
screw that's now deep inside the Fiero.
Fiero Johns. Give me the business card, Gracie. I need to know the actual name. Basically, they're a dealership, or they're not a dealership. Basically, they're a, what are they? A car shop? Repair shop? Mechanic shop. As you hear in the startup, there's definitely a big difference to the way they sound caught. Hello everyone, and welcome back finally to, okay, that was a voice